Hi, and welcome back to another issue of Talking Trade. I'm Ian Coxhead at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
And I'm Sandi Siegel, president of MEJ. Today's guest is Jay Nash. I think I met Jay back in 2010 when he moved back to Wisconsin from Washington and joined the trade community here. Jay is a global trade compliance consultant and the principal of Nash Global Trade Services. Definitely well-versed on export trade compliance policy and a great resource here in Wisconsin. I know we've certainly taken advantage of that and recommended you, Jay, to some of our export clients. So welcome to Talking Trade, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks, Sandi. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
That's really nice to meet you, Jay. And now I'm a trade economist, and export controls is something that I've got to say I've never really thought about before. So for me and for the benefit of our audience, can you just tell us very briefly, what are export controls and why should we care about them?
Certainly. Export controls are government policies, procedures, sometimes restrictions and enforcement measures that focus on a special community of items, of goods, materials, technologies, and equipment. These are items that have the most days of the week will have a wonderful commercial, civilian, beneficial, commercial purpose, but they can be used in weapons applications or to produce weapons of mass destruction and things that we don't want moving around so freely. So these export controls are designed to allow the positive, good trade in those items and technologies, but trying to weed out the situations in where those items may be going to the bad guys or to the bad end uses.
I see. And of course, we hear a lot about export controls imposed by the US on technology and weapons-based materials or knowledge to countries that we compete with. But I guess your specialty is also export controls imposed by other countries. So you want to tell us a little bit about that. What are the hot button issues outside of that US set of policies? Certainly.
Well, I think what you're seeing, what you're seeing around the globe in some ways reflects what you're also seeing in the United States. I see governments, economies all around the globe turning to their toolkit and seeing the export control screwdriver or hammer and pulling it out a little bit more frequently than they have in the past. You're seeing more types of items being subject to these export control regulations.
So not just military applications?
No. So now you're seeing in some cases, for example, in the European Union, you're seeing items being controlled for human rights and anti-terrorism related reasons. You also, again, these items, which we often call dual use items, just because of their inherent capabilities and potential applications, they may get caught up in these export control regulations. So you're seeing more countries apply their controls to more of those types of items and in more types of trade and commercial activities. So it's not just exports of physical goods now. You're seeing more regulation on transfers of technology, on financial transactions even, and other types of trade-related activities.
I see.
Interesting. So Jay, for someone who's in the trenches of all the supply chain disruptions and experiencing the tremendous challenges in actually moving cargo, how are you seeing that relevant to the controls nationally? Are they you would hope there'd be some liberating of those controls and in hopes of promoting export, obviously, which is good for the country and good for the state, and how are you seeing that interact with what's going on in that regard?
Well, interestingly, and I can also, I guess, unfortunately, for many companies trading in these dual use items, you're not seeing a commensurate liberalization of export controls in response to the supply chain challenges and logistical challenges that we're seeing in global trade today. In fact, I think, again, you're seeing countries perhaps maybe motivated by some protectionist inclinations to a degree. If not that, then at least greater inclusion of national security related interests into their calculus, driving the continued, I would say, expansion and greater strengthening and stringency of export controls rather than the liberalization, which, and you, again, you would think that despite, with all the challenges that we're having in the global supply chain, you'd see the other trend, but that's not what I'm seeing.
Right, like I agree. And it's, yeah, just one more thing that, makes it a little more challenging. Do you find the inability to travel, and again, the reliability or, lack of reliability in moving cargo on time and so forth, is that impacting, your licensing or your requirements, or adding any challenges to your role in this?
That's a great question. I think, certainly COVID related restrictions and the challenges of COVID in general, inability to travel, supply chain, logistical issues in major ports. In one way, it's certainly drawing attention from national export control authorities and licensing systems. In a lot of countries, the licensing offices are not very big to begin with. And a lot of the licensing officers around the globe wear multiple hats, at least outside of the United States. So as some of these other issues, trade-related issues and non-trade related issues, draw attention away from that, yes, you do see some slowdowns in the responsiveness of the government agencies in the processing of licenses or answering questions. I think it's certainly having an impact globally.
And we're seeing the same thing in similar ways, which very challenging.
And really quickly, Jay, is the system of export controls subject to more or less scrutiny by international bodies such as the WTO? Do countries that impose these get more of a pass when it comes to that?
It's interesting. By and large, the world of the WTO and the world of export controls really do not intersect. I think it was established maybe some time ago under Article 21 of the WTO, given the national security exceptions that are available. I think government, and especially in a post 9/11, and with the global security challenges that we have today, export controls have more or less been left alone from the WTO universe. Every once in a while, a country will bring a challenge and say it's a trade barrier, or try and bring a WTO dispute mechanism. But usually those are Article 21 will uphold any measures. So, in the export control world, to the extent that we do have any sort of international standardization or international governance, it's a little bit under the UN Security Council. UN Security Council has some sway with a resolution that they've passed. And then there are a few politically binding, but not legally binding groups or regimes of like-minded countries that try and set export control standards. But that's all separate from the WTO.
Yeah. Wow, fascinating. Well, Jay Nash, our time is up, but I'm feeling much smarter just from the few minutes we've spent together. So thank you very much for that. And we'll look forward to seeing you maybe in a future episode.
Well, great to see you, Jay. Thank you.
This has been Talking Trade, and we'll see you again in the next episode. Thanks again, Jay.
My pleasure. Thanks. Take care.